Hello, and welcome to the Casual Dex. I'm your host Dex, and today's video is part 3 of the Dex Techs series where Dex does techs on the decks you want to play today. These decks are typically aimed at a casual power level to provide a good starting point for your average game of Commander. Granted, not every table or matchup is going to be equal, but I try to build them in a way that they can be easily adjusted to better fit your personal meta. I do hope you enjoyed today's video and consider subscribing and turn on notifications to be alerted when new videos come out from my channel. It really helps the channel and helps me learn what kind of content you enjoy to watch. Now, with that out of the way, let's get into the video. Today we'll be covering the dual sword wielding 5-color aggro commander Najeela the Blade Blossom. This commander in my opinion is one of the best 5-color aggro commanders out there, and after reading what the powerhouse of this warrior can do, I just couldn't fight the urge to try and build it. Najeela is one of my first 5-color builds, so I know I'll be making adjustments, but I feel like I'm off to a good start with this one. Najeela is a 2/3 legendary human warrior creature for 2 generic and a red, for the casting cost that reads, whenever a warrior attacks, you may have its controller create a 1/1 white warrior creature token that's tapped and also attacking. There is also an ability that costs a Wooburg, that's 1 white, 1 blue, 1 black, 1 red, and a green. To untap all attacking creatures, they gain trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. Activate this ability only during combat. This commander is a leader in combat with passive token generation just for attacking with warriors. Even if you just swing your commander at someone, you get to create a 1/1 warrior that comes in tapped and attacking, and with a few tricks up our sleeves, we should be able to start really becoming a problem for the other players as early as turn 2 or 3. This deck is not short in any ways to really abuse our opponents and get a lot of bodies on the board, so let's fall in and cover the ranks. We can't cast spells without mana, so let's start things off with the lands in the list. This deck runs a total of 35 lands with 3 basics of each color. We also run all of the shocks, as well as 4 of the allied bond lands. The extra lands in the list include the ever-so-useful Command Tower, Evolving Wilds, Exotic Orchard, Path of Ancestry, Terramorphic Expanse, and my favorite land of the deck being Unclaimed Territory, because when it enters the battlefield, we announce a creature type of the chosen type. In this deck, we'll choose Warrior, of course, and it taps for any color we could possibly need as long as that mana is being used towards a creature spell. Our ramp is limited with Farseek and Kodama's Reach for basics, as well as the always included Soul Ring, but with how low our deck's converted mana cost is, and how many multicolor fixing options we have access to, I feel more playtesting is needed before I can determine if I need to adjust the mana base some more. With a 5-color deck, I wanted to have a lot of access to multiple colors when I need it, so we included Arcane Signet, Birds of Paradise, Chromatic Lantern, Cryptolith Rite, Felwar Stone, Smothering Tithe, and 5 of the talismans including Conviction, Curiosity, Dominance, Impulse, and Resilience. We have a few more options for getting mana of any color we need, but we'll revisit them later in the video because they can actually help us get to the ultimate goal of infinite combat steps so we can end up winning the game. Now with playing a deck that has the goal of combat in mind, we want a decent amount of removal to get rid of things that might make us reconsider sending our creatures at our opponents. Removal here includes Beast Within, Full Breach, Prosum Grip, Nature's Claim, Return to Nature, Swords to Plowshares, and Vandal Blast. Counter magic is also going to come in handy to stop our opponent's win conditions if they manage to crank them out before we can set up, or if they slow us down too much at the beginning of the game. Our deck includes Dovin's Veto, Flusterstorm is one of my new personal favorites, Narset's Reversal, Negate, and Swan Song. Other forms of protection we took are Emerge Unscathed, Heroic Intervention, and good old Lightning Greaves. Card draw is always an important part of Commander, so let's get into how we plan to keep our hand full and dig through the deck. Brainstorm and Ponder go without saying as easy 1-drops. Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study are so powerful if you can get them out early in the game, leaving your opponent stuck between stopping your card draw by using needed resources or to just let you have the draw so they can try to develop their board. Either way the opponent chooses, these are cards they won't want to see in play early in the game. The rest of our draw engines include Edric's Spymaster of Trust, Mentor of the Meek, Mindblade Renderer, Occam Adversary, Skullclamp, and Verity Circle. I pretty much filled the rest of the deck with generalized good stuff to help out the deck. Alicia, who smiles at death, has an attack trigger that lets us pay 2 white and or black to return a creature with power 2 or less from the graveyard into play tapped and attacking. Aven Mind Sensor is a flasher with flying that kills tutors by making it so if an opponent would search their library, they can only search the top 4 of their deck. Beastmaster Ascension needs attackers to be useful, but if we have 7 counters on it, all of our creatures get +5/+5, and with all of the creatures we'll be swinging and Najeela creating more attacking creatures off anything sideways that happens to have Warrior as its creature type, this should be a really fast requirement to be able to meet. Bloodchin Fanatic is a sack outlet for 1 generic and a black, where we sack a warrior and target opponent loses X life, and we gain X life where X equals the sacrificed warrior's power. Bloodchin Rager essentially gives our warrior menace if it's attacking, and with our commander enabling us to go wide, even if all we're sending is 1/1 warrior tokens, it makes it sure that we can at least try to keep a couple of them, unless our opponents have plenty of blockers. Bloodlust Inciter taps to give us a hasty creature, so if we have Najeela en route, the turn after this comes out, we can really get the ball rolling as soon as she hits the board. Champion of Lampold is a 1/1 for 3 mana, and the first ability where creatures with lower power than Champion of Lampold can't block other creatures we control doesn't sound all that good on its own, but its second ability lets us put a 1/1 counter on Champion of Lampold every time a creature enters the battlefield under our control. With just a little setup, this can become a huge problem where suddenly all of the creatures we control can't be blocked and just keep making more and more unblockable tokens off of Najeela's ability as we go about our day. Changeling Outcast counts as all creature types, including Warrior, but it can't block and can't be blocked, so it's really a 1/1 to the face of an opponent and easy triggers off of anything that wants combat damage to go through, or an attack trigger we don't want to worry about ending up dying for turning it sideways. Eladamri's Call is our only tutor in the deck, but it grabs any creature we want from the library, but we do have to reveal it, so make sure you have open mana to cast it to avoid having it wheeled away or forced to be discarded if someone doesn't like what we grabbed. Herald of Dromoka has Vigilance and grants all of our warriors Vigilance. Impact Tremors pings each opponent for every creature that enters the battlefield under our control, so this will be heavily abused as soon as we have Najeela out into play. Marisi, Breaker of the Coil, is a commander I had considered building, but once I decided on Najeela, I felt it still had a place in the deck in the 99 because it prevents our opponents from casting any spells during combat, and if even one creature we have hits our opponents in the face, we get to goad every creature they have on the board at the time. This means that once it comes around to their turn, all creatures affected by this goad mechanic are going to be forced to be sent out as attackers if they're able to do so, and none of them can come back at us. Mistcloak Herald is just another warrior attacking creature that can't be blocked. Rest in Peace is honestly one of the biggest middle fingers you can play if anyone in the table is playing a reanimation strategy, where we exile all cards from all graveyards as it enters the battlefield, and if a card or token would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, it gets exiled instead. Outside of Alicia, who smiles at death, we have no graveyard use in this deck, so we don't need the grave all that much anyway, so if we end up losing something, it's not going to be that big of a deal. Just be careful if anyone's running a mill strat, so that way you don't end up throwing half your deck into exile. Reese the Redeemed is not all that special as a 1/1 for 1 green or white mana, but for 2 and 1 of either, we can tap it to make a green 1/1 white elf warrior token, and for 4 generic and 2 white and or green, we can create a copy of every creature token we control. Early game, it's a body. Mid-game, it's a warrior token maker, and late game, it's a token doubler, so it really doesn't have a bad time to be cast during a game. Secure the Waste is an instant for X and a white to put X 1/1 white warrior creature tokens onto the battlefield. Leave mana open to deal with threats, or make it at least seem like that's what we're doing. Wait until the end step of the turn before us to slam out a ton of warrior tokens that are ready to attack when your turn starts. Universal Automaton is another 1 mana 1/1 with Changeling, but it's generic mana, so it's always a good warrior to see in your opening hand. Unsettled Mariner is yet another changeling creature, but its ability reads whenever you or a permanent you control becomes the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell unless its owner pays 1 generic mana. Granted, 1 mana isn't exactly a lot in Commander, but as a 2-drop, it can really be a nuisance if someone is trying to mess with our board early in the game, and if at worst, it's a 2/2 for 2 that counts as a warrior when it enters the battlefield or attacks. The last of the generalized good cards for the deck, we have the infamous Winota Jonah of Forces. cards. A lot of people are familiar with this card, but I'll read it anyway. For 2 generic and the Boros colors, we get a 4/4 human warrior with whenever a non-human creature you control attacks, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may put a human creature card from among them into the battlefield tapped and attacking. It gains indestructible until end of turn. Put the rest of the cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. Now I don't know if this needs further explanation, but free warrior enter the battlefield effects and attack triggers sounds pretty good to me, and don't worry, our changelings can count as humans as well. Switching gears into what I consider to be the key cards in the deck to really spice things up, we have Aggravated Assault. I'm not one to support physical violence, but for 3 generic and 2 red, we get to untap all of our creatures. After this main phase, there's an additional combat phase, followed by an additional main phase. Granted, we can only use this ability as a sorcery, but combined with some of the more convenient tools in the deck, this can easily lead to infinite combat steps, and sometimes just one additional combat phase can be enough to sweep someone out of the game depending on our board state. Fair Umbra is another enchantment, but as an aura it grants the enchanted creature +2/+2, and whenever that creature attacks, we get to untap all of the lands we control. On top of opening all of our mana to activate abilities we want, if we have all 5 of our colors out in lands, we can easily get an extra combat step just to swing away until we have nothing left to swing, or everyone at the table is reduced to 0, and it has totem armor on top of everything, so if the attached creature would be destroyed, we remove all that damage and destroy Fair Umbra instead. So attaching this to our commander is just opponent abuse. Derevi Imperial Tactician is a flying 2/3 for banned colors, and when it enters the battlefield or a creature we control deals combat damage to a player, we may untap target permanent. With 5 creatures getting through and access to all 5 colored lands we control, we can untap all 5 colors of the Death Rainbow to activate Najeela, and do it all over again as long as we still have Najeela and at least 4 other creatures surviving the first combat phase, and keep in mind, Najeela creates more warriors off of warriors attacking, so having 5 shouldn't be a problem here. Derevi also has an ability as well that has 0 use for us here, but if you're interested in a commander that's never heard of commander tax a day in its life, for 1 generic and banned colors, you can put this beautiful bird wizard onto the battlefield from the command zone. Druid's Repository gets a charge counter whenever a creature we control attacks, and we can remove a charge counter from it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. We seem to have a trend of wanting 5 creatures attacking to activate Najeela's ability, or in a worst case scenario, we can use it to get mana when we need it if Najeela's been hated out of the game. Nature's Will is yet another enchantment, and this one reads whenever 1 or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls, and untap all lands we control. Not only does this enable us to abuse our commander or filter mana into other abilities, but it shuts down almost any way an opponent can respond to anything we do for the rest of our turn, and it also leaves them tapped out until their next turn. That is, if they have a next turn. Phyrexian Altar is here mostly because it's a bit of a pet card for me now, but because it can also be used to pull a little more value from an about to be killed creature by getting 1 mana of any color in exchange for the sacrificed creature's life to filter into a spell we didn't really have enough mana for, or if we're following the rule of 5 with Najeela, we can attack with 5 warriors. Najeela creates 5 more 1/1 warrior creature tokens, and then we can sack 5 to activate Najeela if we want to, and can ensure we will have at least 5 warriors in play when we go into attack again to repeat the process until we run out of warriors or we've won the game. That about wraps up our 3rd episode of Dex Techs, where I do techs for decks that you want to play today. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you've made it this far, please consider subscribing or even sharing the video with a friend. I appreciate it a lot and it helps the channel grow. If you didn't happen to enjoy today's video, remember to hit the dislike button twice to really let YouTube know how you feel. Leave your ideas for commanders you want me to cover next, and I'll take a swing at building the one with the most likes on it. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.